Hello everyone, my name is Shafaz Saeed and you are watching Tech Team. For Java beginners, this is my 12th tutorial. Those who have not subscribed, please subscribe and press the bell icon so that you can get the latest notification of my upcoming tutorials. In the last tutorial, we discussed about Java classes. In this tutorial we will continue to discuss about Java classes and how to define methods in Java. So we will discuss two main topics: methods and function in a class and Java constructor. If you remember, in one of my tutorial we already discussed function and how to call them, and something like a function returns a value, always returns a value. So we already use this. We will use the existing application which we created in the last tutorial, and if you remember, we created a student class and we created two variables inside the class, string name and int age. So this was our main class in which we created two student objects and assigned some of the values to the student 1, and then we created the student 2 and assigned some values, and then we printed the names. Alright, so what we're gonna do, we will create some methods. Like what we will create, we will create a method public, a method which will which will print the name of which will print this variable name. So how we define the method public? Void, because it will not return, it will just print name. We give some name to this function, print name. So what we are trying to do, angle bracket start and then press enter. So we will just try to print the name equals to, or we can just simply print the name. This, you can simply say this name. And also we create another function that will print the age. So this is how we define functions inside the methods. So this is just an example, but we create some other functions with some computations, and if you remember, some mathematical operations and some logics inside the methods. We create something like this. Okay, so this will print the age. Okay, so instead of we will just call this name, and it will print the name, and we will call this method from the main class from here. So like where we created the object student 1. So what we, okay, one thing, just if we go to our previous tutorial, if you remember, we created two objects student 1 and student 2. So in memory they seem like this one, student 1 student 2. So how do we print the name of student 1? We can print the name of student 1 as system.out.println student1.name, and age student1.age. So 17 will be printed. And how do we print the name of second student 2? Student2.name, and age student2.age. So if I show you, it's something similar. student2 dot name, student1 dot name. Similarly, we can say student1 dot age and student2 dot age. Okay, so now so we access the name of object and then the attribute name. Similarly, we will say something. How now we need to call the methods. We are not calling the variables, we will call the method. Student1 dot what was the name? So if we see, if we press the arrow keys, we see we created one method like this one, print name. So this is the method. So you just have to press the arrow key. Whenever you will say student, the object name dot, you will press and you will get some some pop-up with some defined variables already and some methods. We will discuss all these methods later on, but we will focus on the one we created, print name. Okay, what it is saying, let's check. Okay, it's saying void type not allowed here. So it's public. Okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah, we don't need to write it inside because we are already calling. So we are trying to because this is returning void, so anything that returns void, we cannot write it inside system.out.println. So this was the mistake. I was trying to reuse the code, so we can say something like this one. We can also say, see if we can only say this statement. We will focus on this later on. Just remember that if the method is returning void, it cannot be used inside system.out.println. Okay, so student1 dot name, student1 dot age. Okay, we will do again dot, and what's the method name? We created one print name and second was print age. Okay, that's fine. Similarly, if you want to also print the second object name and age, we can also say something like student2 dot print name and student2 dot print age. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so what should be printed? Okay, we start from here. Student1 is created. We give the name to the variables Ali, and we give the age 17. Then we created student2. We give the name Kim and student2 dot age 16. So then we call student1 dot print name. So if we see the method over here, if you see the method over here, print name, what it would print, system.out.println name. So it should print the name, and it student1 dot print age, because this is stored inside student1. So wherever you call with the student1 dot method name, so it would get the values in which you initialize these. It will get the values in which you initialize to the variables. Okay, we run the program and see the output. Okay, see Ali's over here, it printed Ali, then 17, then Kim, then 16. So these are how, so we can define some other methods like print age, and we can define some other methods like we can say public int return age. So this, because it is returning something, now we can write it inside the system.out.println. So this will return age, it should return age because int. So if we use it inside the student app, it should be something like this. Now we can write it inside. So let's print student 1 dot return age. Okay, this one here, it is. Enter, and then say this. So student 1 age, so it will print student 1 dot print name Ali, and then print age 17, then Kim, student 2 Kim, and then 16, and return age student 1 dot age, then again 17. Save this and run it. See, Ali 17, Kim 16, and then again 17. So this is how we can how we define functions and variables inside the class. So we move on to the second concept, which is constructors. So before going to the definition, so we said something student 1 is equal to new student. New is a reserve word, and the student, this is in red, is a constructor. This in the red is a constructor. So what is a constructor? A block of code or method. We can say a method that initializes newly created object. So if you have a difficulty, we can say that it gives initial values to the variables. So let's see how does this work. So let's remove everything from here, and okay, we just created one object, and a one object of student which has nothing, and we have given no values to the student, and we just did this thing. Okay, and now we will print out student 1 dot age one dot okay student 1 dot name, we already said name, now name. Okay, so let's save and run it and see, because we just created an object and we gave no values, nothing came, and see, and now we are printing the age and name. So what should be printed? Let's see. Run, right click and run. Oh, it printed 0 for the age and null for the name. What is this? Now because there is, so if we see the student class, let's remove all this method because we will be, yeah, it's okay. So this is a class, it has some variables and methods, but there is no constructor. Then how comes we say this is a constructor? So just in Java, if there is no constructor, then there is always a default constructor created. So how it is, and public, how is the constructor defined? Public student. Even if you don't define the constructor, there is a constructor like this always. So this, so like this, it is always like this. So it, what is the it has the same name as the class, and it is somewhat very similar to a function, but it has no return type, but it has a name. It cannot have a different name. It has always the same name as the class, and then the angle bracket start and end. So it is something very similar, but it has some restrictions, like it cannot have a return type, and it has the same name as the class, and like this. So now again, if we run our student class, we would get something very similar results, because now because we have created. If you create or don't create, it means the same thing. So just run it. So we get 0 and null. Alright, that's fine. So now again we see the student class, but what is a so if we go to the definition again of this, in other words, we can say to give initial values to the variables. That's because we did not give any values to the variable. By default, 0 is always given to an integer if you don't give the value, and null is always given to the string. That's why it is printing 0 and null. So if you don't give any values, so you have this constructor. Now you can give initial values. Okay, you can say name equals to, instead of null, you can say that I want an empty name. So you can have double quotes and with nothing inside. And if there is no age defined, you can say if there is no age given, it should always have this one, -1. So this constructor, so if you are not defining the constructor, it will give name as null and age as 0. But you have defined a constructor which is giving values to name empty and age -1. So let's save and run the student app, this one. So now you have given some initial values to inside in this constructor, so it should print those values which you have given. Run. See, it has print -1 and over here it is empty. So just for the sake of understanding, because we cannot see this empty value right now, so let's say if there is no value, it should print this thing. Okay, let's see. Student app, right click and run, right click the app and run. See, -1 and TT. So this is how it is printing the values. Okay, that's fine. So this is something like to give the initial values. Okay, but still this is not we have the empty constructor which initializes the values, but the more specific would be and more reasonable would be, it should have initialized values when you are creating an object, and that object should be given the values at that time, rather than instead we call the method or assign the values. Okay, let's do it. So we have this constructor. So now again we create another constructor, which we say public student, which will have name and age. So initialize your name with, okay, we can have different names just for the sake of understanding, or there is another way we can use, but I don't want to go into that detail. Age, yeah, we can say, okay, yeah, that's fine. Name is equal to name, and age equals to age. I don't know, it will, yeah, it's just complaining something. Signed values never use, signed to user. Okay, just we can say age 1 because it has different values, so we can use it, but there is a way to use it using the this keyword. We can use it, but we will do it later on. Okay, we just say, okay, so now what is the purpose of this constructor? Okay, we have default constructor. If we don't give, so it will give some default values like null and empty, but if you define it and give some values also. But what is this? Okay, let's see. Now we have created the student class, and okay, just think that if we remove this, we don't need this default constructor because we have already defined this one. So if you define the constructor, then you cannot use something like this one. Then we have to use this new constructor, this one. So this constructor is saying we can only create this student class if you give some name and age of integer. Now, okay, now that's meaningful now, because we have created a student and we are giving values, and you can create as much values, name, age. We can also give sex, male, and which grade he's in, grade 10, and so on, and that depends on the requirement. For now we will just focus on the two values, and because we have a constructor that can take the two values, name and age, that's it. So if we have another constructor, we can define another constructor, public student string name, a constructor which takes only one values. A constructor, similarly we can define a constructor which can take 3 values, but there should be 3 variables also for the students. Now because we have only one, we can create 1 and 2. So name equals to, okay, this name equals to this one. So now it means we can create, if we go to the student tab, we say that we can create a student object where name and age. Also, let's create the second object. See, so the first object we created with the name and age, and the second one we created with name, because we have one constructor which takes one only name and one constructor which takes name and age. So we can create objects in both ways. But if we remove this one, then in the student tab this will give error. See, you see the red line, because it's saying it's not defined. So we can only have, so we need to give the value over here as well, 16. So this is how constructors are defined. So if we go to the definition again, in other words, we can say to give initial values to the variables. So you define a constructor and you give values, and over here your constructor is initializing, is giving values to these variables. So the value coming here is given to these variable. The name will be given to name, and age will be given to age. So this is how we initialize the variables. So for now, thank you very much. We will continue with constructors and other concept in the upcoming tutorial. So take care and wish you good luck.